Let's start the session with Soledad Barruti. She's a journalist and she wrote two books that I really recommend to all of you. And she's part of the group and platform about it's Bocado from Latin America and talks about the investigation journalism. And that's what she will be talking about periodism, investigation, laboratories, and alimentation. Hello, good morning to all of you. Thank you for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I really like those meetings, but I hope we can see each other face to face. That's a key moment for divulgation, communication, and the journalists to change the narratives that are harming platform is creating. The problem, or that's what I think, de una historia que está siendo contada y reflejada, por supuesto, por jugadores de turno, que son quienes gestionan y manejan desde siempre históricamente la verdad que se cuenta, la verdad es algo que se cuenta siempre. So, que resulta muy conveniente al poder the story that they tell always is convenient to them, those who are in the power. De repente empieza a resquebrajarse y a través del malestar colectivo y de los problemas que implica collective sadness or the collective disagreement with that history makes that this history is not that real anymore. Estamos presenciando con los problemas que genera exactly what we are living with climate change, la destrucción de nuestros sistemas alimentarios, the destruction of our food systems, los territorios como los espacios más dañados de esta época. Destruction of our territories. Enferma por estar atravesada y por estar sosteniendo con sus corporalidades este sistema que se propone como total y totalizante. Y bueno, nos genera obviamente muchísimos problemas. Entonces, la narrativa está sostenida, por supuesto, porque sabemos que el poder de turno que refiere a grandes corporaciones, cada vez más grandes, concentradas, es en línea directa con quienes legitiman todo esto, que son desde los medios de comunicación masivos, todos sostenidos por pauta publicitaria, que media, advertisements, companies, también por profesionales, por lo que yo llamo la ciencia del establishment, professionals, los distintos grupos, carteles profesionales, muchas veces agrupados en sociedades que parecen muy científicas y que resultan ser repetidores de esta narrativa. ¿Cómo hacer para dentro de todo esto, en donde quienes están contando esta realidad, los periodistas y las periodistas, quienes comunican todo esto, pertenecen a este sistema y buscan comunicar la realidad, estamos con los periodistas como sujetos precarizados, somos sujetos que hemos perdido cualquier forma de lost any way of de individualidad, de independencia, individualism, independency, de corrientes que complican, que hacen muy compleja nuestra labor. It's really difficult to do our work en ese sentido, pensando en todo esto y creyendo profundamente que hoy en día si la comida buena, sana, limpia y justa es un lujo, antes de lujo es acceder a esa información sana, limpia y justa. Food, it's what we need. We also need that kind of communication. Como un espacio para reponer en el periodismo like an space to the journalists, a space we all need. Nosotros como periodistas no hay un expertise en la mayoría, sino que lo que hacemos es referenciarnos a fuentes. ¿Cómo hacemos eso? We use different sources of information, but if those sources are contaminated, we can use them. Alineada a una forma de respuesta hacia, obviamente, la no transformación de nada, o la no crisis de nada, el sostenimiento del status quo. Entonces, entendimos que nos juntamos junto con colegas de Brasil en un primer momento, y luego de México, en un trabajo de construcción para pensar cómo se hacía para permear en los medios de comunicación. Entonces, nuestro trabajo fue, en primer término, bueno,
the first thing we did
entender cuáles eran estas problemáticas,
was to understand
bien claro,
which problems we were facing.
Entonces, lo que hacía falta en el periodismo, en primer término,
And then
era financiación,
we saw that we needed
para dedicarse a eso. Nadie puede con muy poco dinero y muy poco tiempo pensar,
because we can't do that much without few time. We can study and work and think without time.
Tiempo rápido, el clickbait y todas esas cosas. Y eso, cuando nosotros hablamos de alimentación, tenemos un doble problema, porque todas las noticias alimentarias, cuando se denuncia,
there is another problem. If we have
bien enunciada
reports and articles that we want to explain about the problems in the food system, then we have a lot of problems to publish it.
En la centralidad de los medios de comunicación. Cuando aparece una nota, cuando aparece alguien diciendo el sistema
alimentario, someone is trying to say that the food system is making us sick, that it's overusing our resources, that it's not sustainable anymore, then they attract the people who wants to read that. But we need funds to write those articles, to investigate, learn.
Y también hace falta una permanente,
of course,
un permanente seguimiento, hace falta algo que también
a permanent following up, and we don't have that nowadays.
En América Latina, el rol
in America Latina, we have an editor, but the role of editor has been
por lo general mal corridas, además.
Kind of disappearing.
Poder hacer un trabajo de edición rigurosa, de acompañamiento,
we want to do a rigorous work.
Entonces
we need that new role of an editor.
Financiadores que quisieran trabajar sobre temáticas que nos
we started to think about who could fund
que tenían que ver con
journalists
de tierras, que tenían que ver con cambio climático y que tenían que ver mucho
con la influencia corporativa sobre climate change,
alimentarias y de salud,
territory, tenants,
etc. Políticas de etiquetado frontal en la región. Entonces, sobre todo eso, puesto sobre la mesa, el acompañamiento que tuvimos es de financiadores como Ibirapitanga.
We saw that Ibirapitanga, for example, funded us. That's a company that works funding, works related to those topics, and they never work with journalists, but they thought it was really interesting what I was doing, and that of journalists was very important, and they thought it was really interesting. It's also very important that journalists are locals and regionals. The problems in Latin America are regional problems. The same happens in Europe. European problems are regional problems. And when we don't write clear articles,
justamente una dinamitación de lo que podría ser una fuerza sinérgica dinámica.
Explodes. Entonces, and harms what we are creating. So we are working as a regional level, and we fund journalists.
Y luego encontramos una republicación. Los medios de comunicación en este momento necesitan estar nutridos de estos temas, porque justamente está todo tan complejizado con lo que les conté anteriormente que no están esas temáticas. Entonces, que haya un espacio, que haya un buen material para eso, es algo que está buenísimo.
Material, a good article for the media is what they are looking for.
La construcción de una situación muy compleja para que la realidad emerja. Sin embargo, una vez que aparece la realidad por otro lado,
once the reality is there, then they also want to publish those articles.
Alguien se le abrió un micrófono, Samantha.
One mic is open.
Ahí está. Bueno, no te preocupes,
no, don't worry.
Bueno, y entonces esto, una red de medios que se interesara en republicar esto y construimos esto, y luego apareció una nueva pata de financiación también, que fue la agencia Henry Ford, que también financia muchos proyectos en América Latina, y por último, Vital Strategies, que es una de las agencias de Bloomberg Philanthropies, que trabaja también apoyando las investigaciones y nunca había trabajado con periodismo. Es la primera vez, es difícil la construcción con las mismas agencias para que entiendan lo que es el periodismo.
It's really difficult to explain them what's journalists, but we are doing well.
Y bueno, eso, y Bocado está teniendo muy...
And Soledad, sorry, yes, I wanted to ask you if you could please just talk a bit slower for the interpreters. Yes, I'm so sorry because I used to talk very quick. I'm sorry. Okay,
bueno,
thank you for reminding.
Entonces, nosotros empezamos a trabajar
we started to work in different projects.
Los desafíos más grandes que tenemos en Bocado,
in Bocado is the construction.
En Bocado está teniendo un momento de transformación muy grande con los socios brasileños retirándose luego de entender formas distintas de trabajo.
Construction because we are now in kind of a transition. We are understanding new ways of working.
Estética, como que nosotros
also about aesthetics, because in America Latina we work from narrative journalism and graphic narrative.
Un poco como generar una forma de trabajo en común. Entonces en este momento estamos
the same happens in Mexico, so for the coming year we're just developing a new way to work.
Entonces es encontrar esa afinidad, por supuesto.
So we have to find the affinity with other journalists.
Desde el lugar de trabajo, o sea, la primera solidez tiene que estar puesta conceptualmente,
pero
también estéticamente. Entonces tenemos que pensar que el cómo es tan importante.
We have to think that the how is that important as the what.
Nosotros queremos derribar, es que un cómo muy eficaz.
The narrative that we want to destroy has a really effective how with advertisement. Advertisement is really effective.
Que son dirigidos para convencer a
and
una
the
gran
messages that are aimed to convince people are also really
tras
effective.
esa efectividad hay que reponer con,
And if we want to find another way of being effective, then we have to find another way to work. And we just want to be journalists. We don't want to depend on advertisement. So we have to present it in a nice, interesting way.
Todas estas cuestiones que dije antes.
In which
el último desafío,
we can talk about the
luego de haber
topics
sorteado el de la financiación,
the second challenge was the funding.
El de encontrar medios de republicación es muy grande, que
ways
periodistas.
to publish
Encontrar periodistas
our articles. It was difficult to find journalists during the pandemic. It was really difficult to find those journalists that work as we work. And why is that difficult? Well, because it's a precarious sector, because we work in a difficult sector.
Y esto parece un trabajo más de un psicólogo
and
it's kind of, pero hay que entender que
like a job of a psychologist and not a journalist, but
subjetividades de los periodistas como profesionales
right
están
now
atravesadas por estos conflictos muy de época.
it's
que
really
tiene que ver con
difficult
una
to
degradación
find
profunda del trabajo,
journalists
donde
that
atenerse a trabajar mucho tiempo con una edición, a
working
pasar
a
por
lot of
procesos
time
complejos
with the
de
same
edición, por
article,
de repente nosotros hacemos
with
5
difficult
o 7
process
veces
of
de edición
editing.
por texto. No es que hacemos una vez.
We edit
Trabajamos
the
desde el
text like
comienzo y
5
luego
or
van
7
7 rondas
times.
de texto y pagamos bien para
And
que cada uno
we
de esos
also want
procesos
to pay
esté siendo obviamente un acuerdo y no un abuso
to
laboral.
offer
Y sin embargo, muchas veces genera
a worthy salary.
como un ruido ahí. nosotros trabajamos sobre todo, como no hay un gran expertise en periodismo relacionado a la
there are
alimentación,
no
trabajamos sobre todo
expertise
con
in that kind of
periodistas
journalism,
que trabajan
so
en
that's why
derechos
we
humanos.
work with
Y ahí es
journalists
muy interesante
specialized
también
on
porque sí nos
human rights.
encontramos con
And it's very
periodistas y medios de
interesting
comunicación
because we
muy
found
agradecidos
journalists
por encontrar otra
and
forma de
also
trabajo
media
que no los
that
separaba de lo que estaban
that were
haciendo y
really
les daba otro
thankful
punto
to
de vista. O
find
sea, enriquecía su trabajo,
our
sacándolos un
group.
poco de los muertos, las fosas
It was really
del
enrichment
narcotráfico
for them to work with that
y las
kind
milicias,
of
¿no? O sea, como
journalists.
que poníamos otra situación dentro de lo que está afectando a los derechos
We
humanos
were
en nuestra región,
explaining
que de
in
repente
another way
generaba
the
casi un aire
problems they
fresco, a pesar de que
we found
científico, no en el
better
periodismo gastronómico.
journalists, not in gastronomical journalists, not in scientific
para que puedan salir
journalists.
de muchas veces de una idea de periodismo gourmet, en donde la solución está puesta siempre en grandes cocineros que están trabajando con pequeños productores. La verdad es que ahí hay un trabajo por hacer muy grande, nos costó
gastronomy
un montón.
journalists always or used to do a really good work, but it's not what we were looking for. And other kind of journalists that we found are the ones who work in economy. They have a more progressive point of view. And
que no está siendo contada con esa especificidad que requiere y que nutre sus profesiones con una nueva forma de entender la realidad, en donde
the professions by understanding the reality in a new way.
Nosotros lo sabemos, quienes trabajamos en alimentación, están las plataformas de construcción del sistema todo. Y la verdad es que haber encontrado esa respuesta que fue maravillosa en muchos periodistas que se fueron a acercar a esto, así que bueno, ese es un resumen de lo que fue, de lo que es Bocado, de lo que viene siendo
Bocado,
y de la situación de la comunicación hoy, que es bien difícil, pero al mismo tiempo necesita profundamente que haya muchas personas involucradas.
Communication needs that a lot of people is committed with that aim. Thank you, Soledad. It was really interesting what you said. Thank you very much for saying and just talking the time you had. I know it's really difficult, but we really thank you. And it was
yo les pido disculpas
a good presentation.
Que ir
I'm so sorry because I have to leave.
Voy a un lugar interesante que es el Congreso de la Sociedad de Nutrición Latinoamericana, SLAN,
que
nunca había tratado estos temas y de repente los va a tratar y me pareció muy bueno.
About nutrition in Latin America. I think it's also really interesting. Well, we are recording, of course, so you can also come back, watch the video, and listen to the other colleagues. Thank you. Okay. Please, for the next guest, once you speak, please let us know which language are you going to speak, okay? Because of the translation. Our next guest is Viviana Catrileo from Chile. She's a member of National Secretariat in la CLOC. And she's a coordinator that some of you already know because she is a really important person in Latin America. So we're really grateful that you're here. We will talk about the articulation about food sovereignty and peasants' rights in America Latina. Hello, good morning to all of you. To different parts of the world. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. So that's my morning. It's 11:30 right now. I have a PowerPoint. I prepared a PowerPoint. Could I please share it? Yeah, I prefer to share it so I can move on and come back. Well, thank you for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. It's also very nice to hear other colleagues, as we already did, about communications and media and editors. Yes, for us, it's also a problem to work sometimes with editors if they depend on money and they have any other interest. Okay, let's start. What time is it right now? Okay, yes. Let's start. I will try to do it very quick to explain you what we do. Okay. The title of the section is Articulation of Food Sovereignty and the Peasants' Rights in America Latina. I think that as a coordinator, Latin American coordinator in the organization of CLOC and la Via Campesina, today we had a meeting that we celebrate every 2 months to see what's the political situation, what we are doing, and I had to leave some minutes before to attend to this meeting. Okay. If you don't know the CLOC and la Via Campesina, we are an articulation, continental articulation, that's a CLOC. So women and men from the field, we work all together. We defend human rights and economic, cultural, social, political rights. We also defend the production and the peasant's life. And we try to defend that kind of life and our rights. Okay, so that articulation, the CLOC, was born in the resistance Black peasants organization. There we found indigenous and peasants. The La Via and la CLOC didn't exist at that time, but we were together in diversity. That was with our slogan. That was our slogan, united in diversity, and we also wanted to finish with the socialist bloc and Sandinism, to let them know that we are still fighting for our rights and that we want to keep progressing. In that meeting, we celebrated another 3 meetings and we started articulating the organizations. We had very important purposes, like how, as indigenous and Black people, we felt oppression. We also wanted to have again our history, and together with the popular movement in America Latina, we wanted to create participative paths and destroy the oppression that we're feeling, that we are living. In that space, we wanted to create a place of meeting and also to communicate, to be aware of what's happening in every of the territories we were present. From that moment on, we kept meeting in Colombia in 1989. Our second meeting was in Guatemala in 1991. And in every meeting, we were talking about the memory, the history. In Guatemala, we were talking about, or our slogan was just saying, "Stand up, America." And it was the meeting of the resistance of the peasants. The third meeting was in Nicaragua, 1992. And what we achieved after those 3 meetings, well, it let us know we could meet, the different organizations could meet. We created common agendas. So they started to work together in the anti-liberal fight, and it was also the fight for the peasants sector. So we wanted to respect the diversity and differences, and that allowed the creativity and development of those organizations. Then we created La Via Campesina, and after that we created LAC. La Via Campesina is an international organization, it's not just present in Latin America, but it's also international. And then we created the CLOC. So the articulation of peasants in Latin America. From that moment on, the CLOC organized the first Congress in Peru in year 1994, and they wanted to defend the life, the land, the production. The second Congress was in Brasilia in 1997. And our slogan was together against the neoliberalism for the earth, the life, and the peasants. Then in that second Congress in Brazil, we created the first assembly of rural women to create equality among them. It was an important moment for the CLOC because we were talking about the women's fight and the violence and harassment that they were suffering. And the women face a particular kind of violence. The third Congress was in August of 2001 in Mexico. And it was the second Women Assembly, and it was about food sovereignty for a future without hunger. We also created the first Continental Assembly for Youth. In the fourth Congress in Guatemala, 2005, we're still working on the Youth and Women Assembly, and we work together against imperialists for the life, the earth, the territory, and the sovereignty of our communities. The fifth Congress in Ecuador, 2010, we were against the empire. We wanted to defend the land, the sovereignty, and our communities. America is fighting. In every Congress, we will also celebrating women and youth assemblies. Then we have the next Congress in Argentina, 2015, against the capitalism and for the sovereignty of our communities. And the last Congress was in 2019 in Cuba. And we were talking about from the territory, unity, fight, and resistance for the socialism and sovereignty of our communities. And also the Assembly of Youth, and also the Women Assembly was celebrated. Women Assembly, the Assembly. We always say that with feminism, we create socialism. At the beginning, we had another slogan, but we wanted to have it more positive. So that's why we just, with feminism, we achieve socialism. Okay. For the CLOC, our priorities have to do with the peasants' agriculture and also food sovereignty. We think it's important to keep those things in mind, and also gender equality, and also defense the land, seeds, and biodiversity, as well as the rights. The CLOC is a reference for the Via Campesina. It's an anti-capitalism, anti-neoliberal, anti-patriarchal, and they fight to construct a permanent solidarity, and it's born from Cuban Revolution. Well, we also want to transform things in the field, and it's a democratic, plural, and revolutionary organization. So now you can see the La Via Campesina and the CLOC. We are present in North America, Central America, South America. Okay, how do we organize ourselves? We create international conferences, and we have different fights right now. And the collectives are the spaces where we can talk and think and debate and experience. And it also allows us to be active with the organization. We can share our personal experiences and also help people to keep developing, and allows us to work and fight together. There are different collectives in the CLOC and in La Via Campesina, but as CLOC, those are the different fields we are working in: the human rights and peasants' rights. And for us, it was a huge achievement that in the Peasants' Declaration, that was a really difficult and long work, we made them understand and guarantee peasants' rights. And now they recognize that peasants' communities are facing violence. And if that situation is happening, that we need our tools to respect the rights of the peasants. Now there's the chart of peasants' rights. Bolivia was supporting that process with Evo Morales, and there were other countries that were fighting for those rights during 17 years. And now the UNO, at that time, the UNO signed that the rights for the peasants. And we still have to work in other countries, in politics, and also in Chile. We have to still working to get more rights. But yeah, it was a really important moment when we achieved those rights. The second collective is land, water, and territory. Well, all of them are related and linked together. Then migrations, seeds, biodiversity, peasants' agriculture, also the training collective that has a really important role. And now with the pandemic, where we can't meet face to face. And the CLOC kept a calendar about trainings and conferences. We were really active. Then we have the collective of Afro-American communities, then communication. And it helps us to show how we see the world and how's the reality we are living in. Right now, in the summit of food system, CLOC and LA Campesina, we had our position, our opinion, and a communication organization had a really important role to show the vision we shared. I'm so sorry, but you are running out of time. Okay, well, then I shortly explain you that the CLOC also did some campaigns in different topics. We have the global campaign against the agrotoxics. And we explain, well, our campaigns. We have 5 really important campaigns. The second one is the defense of the seeds and communities' patrimony. And well, it's what we need to get that food sovereignty. Also, our global campaign against the violence against women. Then the next campaign is the one for permanent solidarity with political persons in jail and the defense of human rights. And also to help those political prisoners that have been imprisoned for fighting for the rights of the peasants. And I also want to say that the campaigns that we create are linked one with each other. They all have like the same spine, that is defending the life, the territories, the earth, and also climate change, the consequences of the capitalism. And of course, we're trying to face that capitalism. And we also want to get food sovereignty and also understand how important consumers are to change the reality we're living. Okay, to finish or to conclude, you can see some images related to the campaigns. That's what I wanted to share. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Viviana. Yeah, sure, that in the chat, so they can know more about the CLOC. They can visit the website. Yeah, it's really important what Viviana said about the position of the CLOC and LA Campesina in the summit. So you can visit the website and find more information there. Thank you very much, Viviana. Okay, now Betsy Días, you have the floor. She's from Mexico. And she will talk about the experience in communication to influence in politics the power of the consumer. Okay, Betsy, please speak in the Spanish channel. Yes, thank you very much, Valentina. I'll also share my screen because I also have another PowerPoint. Okay. Well, to start my presentation, I want to thank the Slow Food Movement for your invitation. For us in El Poder del Consumidor, it's really important to share with you the main messages that we have and the communication strategies that we are implementing from different organizations to have the levels that we need. Well, first of all, I wanted to share with you what we do. We are an organization, a Mexican organization, an ONG, an NGO, and for more than 15 years, we work to defend and promote the rights of the consumers. But we do our campaigns to influence public politics and to modify the business practices to benefit the consumers. Our campaigns are about 4 topics. So the health, to prevent obesity and chronic diseases, efficient mobility and climate change. So the right to breathe clean air, and also vehicular security. And what I'm going to show you is related to our first campaign. Well, so we could have the level that we have in Mexico. We needed 2 processes that we started in 2019. The first one was a legislative process, and the second one was an executive process. In the first process, we reformed the health legislation to recognize a label for drinks and food. And the other process wanted to pass that reform in a new law to label packaged food and drinks. And that's what would allow us to use that label. I will talk about the legislative movements that we were doing to reform the law, the general health law. I will explain what happened during March 2019, between April 2019, once it was approved. Okay, really quick. We had, well, I'll explain how we did the whole process and what was our strategy, our communication strategy. First, 3 important topics. First one, we have to explain the problem to generate interest. Second one, communicate the causes of that problem. Once we did so, people could react. And the third point was to give solutions. So to achieve boosted action, to achieve the commitment of the people with our cause. Our problem, the problem was to show the problem that obesity and diabetes had in Mexico. From 2016, it was an epidemiological emergency. There are some points. 1 every 3 kids have obesity, and 7 out of 10 adults also. And about diabetes, that's the second reason of death in our country. For 2019, more than 100,000 Mexicans were dying before of diabetes. This year, we had 150,000 Mexicans dying because of the diabetes. We wanted to explain that problem. The causes. Well, how can we communicate that the context in which we are living is what creates obesity, that boosts the consumption of unhealthy food? Well, those products, so drinks with sugar, and also ultra-processed food create diabetes and obesity. But the common people didn't have enough information to recognize that. One of the solutions was to change the food context. So of course, the obesity is a consequence of that context, obesogenic context. The solution was to create a new label to inform in an easy way about the harming ingredients that those products have. The label is from public interest and also has the effort behind. When we started to talk about it in Mexico, we really had enough evidence. We had enough information. And we know that using that label was working in Peru and in Chile. Okay, we know the context, and we defined our communication objectives. Of course, was also to talk with policymakers to change the label. The main challenges was how to create interest in that topic. How can we communicate that what is happening, and how can we let them know how important it is to change the situation, and how can we face the food lobby? Then we defined our key messages. We knew who we were going to talk. Of course, we wanted to talk with policymakers in legislative and executive power, but of course, we also wanted to communicate with common people, with media, be closer to policymakers. And it's really important how we communicate to common people and who are those who are listening to us. And we wanted to share with them the necessity, the need of that new label in packaging. It was key in our campaign. That is also related with what Viviana said about the networking. It's really important to create and strengthen the alliances and the power of the consumers is that alliance. We are a 35 organization and we share a common agenda. And what we have in common is that we want to prevent obesity. In that context, that alliance helps us to strengthen our message and also helps us to be more present in different medias and in different places. Our campaign was present in our street. It was an online and offline media. It's also important how we could create, how we could be present in the street. We also invited the media in our events. We also took pictures. And we also had a digital campaign. We created a website, and we also created a hashtag. And we had different campaigns for Facebook too. And we created a different campaign for a different public in our audience. So we could design really specific material for our public. So infographics, video, you can find all that in social media. And to conclude, I would like to talk about what we did in the legislative level. We talked with every single policy party. So we wanted to talk with all of them and communicate that project. We designed different projects, different materials. They received it in digital and non-digital formats. And there were some policymakers that believed on us and that helped us. We also attended public forum, and we also wanted that national and international expertise could attend to this public forum to share the evidence that we already had about that new label model. We worked together, and it was also really important, the evidence that we had, that the food lobby was not being clear. They invest a lot of money, and they don't want to support, of course, our project. And they were really concerned about our projects because it affects to their agenda. So we use format and study that explains the tactics of the industry, the interfere to the new level. I wanted to share that slide with you because it let us know the strategies.
Toda esta información, ¿no? Todo este bombardeo, porque así como nosotros también tenemos interés en que los tomadores de decisión estén informados sobre nuestra causa, pues ellos también van a seguir como su proceso, ¿no? Entonces es muy importante que tengamos...
wanted the food lobby. So it's important to have that information in forehand. We got a lot of visibility and received the support of the people. We created a Twitter campaign with famous people people that were convinced that our project was important. We also, in Twitter, we shared the pictures of policy makers, of famous people, of important people supporting our project. Well, I think I have to conclude. Okay. Thank you, Valentina. Yeah, to conclude, it's really important to evaluate our campaign and what we were doing so we can be more effective in our following campaigns. The results of the campaign is that now we have a new agent label, and of course you can also check all the conclusion, but we have to be present in the working groups. We have to involve in creating new laws. We have to be creative on how can we communicate how important our cause was, so people can understand what we are doing, and so people can commit with our cause and can understand why is that important. We also have to share the evidence that we have. And that's all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We know that it's really difficult to give that much information in just 15 minutes. We don't just get inspired from that kind of organizations, but of course we can search the different organizations and base of La Via Campesina or different organizations in different parts of the world, so we can work together. Maybe Betsy, we can also talk with you. If we could talk about America Latina, and let's see where we can work together. Thank you very much. So we need to do a pause. It was not organized, but now, well, as I told you before, we just have one interpreter for Spanish into English. And well, Sarah, she needs some time to rest. So if it's okay for you, we meet again in 5 minutes. Okay, I know we have a bit of delay, but we have to do that pause. Okay, thank you. Just get ready because I will give you the floor. Thank you. Okay, so you're coming back. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, she's back. Bit rested. Okay, now we have the last presentation of this session with George Schnyder, member of the International Committee of Slow Food, representing the also created the company Mesa that organizes events, and it's a communication company also. She will be talking about strategies and tools of advocacy, the movement for slow food, and the paper of eco-gastronomy. Please let us know in which languages will you. The interpreter apologized, but needs to enter again into the Zoom with his second device, but because something failed. And there was a mistake. And once I can enter, I will start with the interpretation.
George?
Can you listen to me? Yes. Can you listen to me? Yes. Just 1 second. We have a problem with the English booth. But it's just a second, okay? Okay. So we can keep going. I can talk about my experience. I can talk about what I've lived during last years, about social issues. I've been in slow food from 2006, 2008, I think. I think policymakers need to understand. But it's really difficult to be in politics. You have to be really careful, and you never know where you're going, and we need clear values and clear ideas to talk with policymakers. Those values can always be clear, so they are confused. So you have to be really clear when you talk with policymakers. You can be intransigent, you can be different, but you have to be faithful with your values. The intransigency of the values is a key point to give voice to those values. We have to be really clear, and we also have to be willing to listen, even when you don't want to listen what they are going to say. I would also like to say that from a certain point, you have to understand how important is a contact net, and that's exactly what we are doing here. We have to live with policymakers, but of course we have to create a contact list. For example, with the media, as we already said before, journalists are key points. We have to construct relationships with journalists or people working in media. It's fundamental that journalists and the press is also working to get the advocacy. It's also important to participate in public entities, in public activities linked with regional and municipal councils, and also related to food system in our case. Because the voice we have will be seen, will be heard in those councils, in the new networks that you're creating. So you're creating an influence net. If you have councils, journalists at different levels, then you can link different initiatives. I felt really glad when I heard our colleagues talking about the food security in Latin America. There are different countries with this same focus. Slow food, there's a really important work of network, and also to link people, and also defenses the consumer. And we should be present in all the countries, and the dialogue, the connections, the discussion we should keep all that. Sometimes we have to talk with policymakers and discussing and creating new policies, and also be present when they take decisions. At the end of the day, we can't be shy. You have to be brave to be in the politics. You have to discuss, you have to debate, you have to fight. And if you don't do that, it won't work. The project won't work. For the advocacy, to get that advocacy, you also need experience, and there are different levels, okay, or different steps. Your first step is your school, in the region in which you're acting, in the place where you have connections with people. And you can also work as a volunteer in your community. You can also work in a corporation or with an entity, but of course, the topic also has to be related with you. You have to show passion what you're doing. Because you spend time working to get that purpose, the purpose of the community. Advocacy is not, it's not leadership. Advocacy is that you're helping in that leadership so others can do that. Sometimes a leader is not the best influencing policymakers. There are amazing leaders, but sometimes it's not they're not good at talking with politics. You already know what I'm talking about. You know the values I'm talking about because you're here. And if you don't want to talk and be linked with policymakers, then someone else will have to, but you can support that people. In slow food, we think that a good achievement could be to be in institutional programs. In those programs that fight for a clear and clean and fair food for everybody. Well, I can explain to you something that happened about a law that we achieved here. It was about the livestock products. We had to modify that law and couldn't keep developing it. We always modified it, but we couldn't keep developing. When a cheese producer had to close because of that law, then we decided to take action. Today, the person that is with the secretary is someone I met years ago when I was working in another sector. That person is a deputy today. His main assessor is a friend of mine. We studied together. I'm a slow food activist. And I talked with him about the platform. We also linked him with another person, with another secretary in association. Four days after the protest of the morning, we talked again. I called Marin Ali at DPT, also Luis Fernando, General Director of a policy party. Okay, I just have to, okay. Okay, we all met again. And some problems, but then we decided to leave the problems aside and work together with that law. That law that we changed is the really modern law. We could approve the law, but it was really difficult and hard work.
Quer dizer, e uma vontade de fazer com isso acontecer. Esse é um exemplo como o slow food deve influenciar. Tá? Eu deixo isso como uma mensagem dizendo que vocês são líderes. Líderes precisam trabalhar em...
And leaders need to work with policymakers. And at that level is where you can change the world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tenemos ahora algunos minutos para las preguntas. Vamos a dedicar más
some time for questions. I see that some of you already wrote some questions in the chat. That's a question for the CLOC and Poder del Consumidor. So Viviana, Betsy, that question is for you. The question is, how is the CLOC and el Poder del Consumidor fund? CLOC en la Villa Campesina funding is a difficult topic. The first thing we do is to create a political project, and thanks to have then the organizations that support and fund us appear. So the fund arrives from the effort and the work of the militancy and national and local organizations. Also from international solidarity, from other agencies that want to support our fight. We don't receive money from Monsanto, for example, and we are very proud to say that. So each territory has its particularities, but we don't accept funds from companies that attempt against life and our articulation and organization. We know who they are, and even if they offer us all the resources and money they have, we won't accept it because we have our principles. And we work with alliances and militancy. Thank you, Viviana. Slow food also gets funds for the campaigns. You can see that in our website. And we will talk also about funding in the next session. Okay, Betsy, you have the floor. Betsy? Sorry, I couldn't hear. Can you hear me? Thank you, Valentina. Yes, I think it's an important question. As Viviana said, one of the main challenges to get that independency of our opinions is to be fund independent. In El Poder del Consumidor, we don't get funds and money from any private institution linked to the food industry. It's really difficult to get funds from institutions that are not linked with the food industry. And we get funds from Heinrich Bold organization and also from Bloomberg Philanthropies organization. And I know there's other institution, Canadian institution and we work with them in the campaign for our schools, so we can have healthy schools with a healthy food environment. So it depends on the campaign we are working at that time, but gave us the opportunity to be independent and to give our opinion and to have our own agenda is to avoid the fund of organizations linked to the food industry. Thank you very much, Betsy. Yeah, that's also what we do in Slow Food. You can, well, I wrote some links in the chat. We don't have that in Spanish. You can see that in Portuguese and in English. Perla y Chiara from Argentina, they are together and they wanted to ask a question. Yes, I have two questions. The first one is, I saw something in the PowerPoint, and she said that in the rural areas there's a huge rate of obesity. And I think that we all think that those harming products are in the big cities, in capitals, but that's not true. And I wanted if you could explain that a bit more. And the second question I have about advocacy, that it's something that we all do, is the narrative that we use. Could we do something different to influence other people and to commit them with our organization? Should we be more like fatalistic, or could we use the narrative to give some hope? So that's something I've been talking a lot with other activists about, how to use the narrative. Thank you. Betsy, please. Thank you, Valentina. Perla, thank you for your question. Yes, I think that what you're saying about the situation of malnutrition in rural areas, sometimes we think that it's the opposite. People tend to think that in rural areas there is no obesity. But in Mexico, for example, I don't have the concrete numbers, but the amount of obesity in rural areas is really high. And it shows that advertisement and the selling of those products in rural communities, where sometimes they can't even access the water, is really high. They could have access to local food, but due to the advertisement that the food system is creating, they tend to choose those products. In Chiapas, in rural areas of Chiapas, Coca-Cola had advertisement in their own indigenous languages. So you see how aggressive the advertisement of those companies is. Then those products and the infrastructure the companies have, and the money they also have, sadly makes it people choose those products with really poor nutrition conditions. One positive point of that new label is that thanks to those black signs, some people said, well, sometimes you see that there's that a product is high of calories or high on sugars, but now, and sometimes some people couldn't understand what was there because it was not in their language. But now when you go to the store, and if you see that black label, you know, you don't have to choose that product because you should select the ones with those levels or with the less number of levels possible. And I think it was really important that our initiatives are for all the people, not just for people in the cities. Thank you, Betsy. Well, I give the floor to Saul. He also wanted to ask a question. I don't know if we have time because we still have the group dynamics, but if there are more questions, please, you can write them in the chat. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I also wanted to ask Betsy about the label. In Honduras, sadly, there's an opposition to the local product. There's a lot of imported products. So which strategies are you using? Because here our government supports the foreign production. And here sometimes it's cheaper to find fast food than to find the local products. So which strategies are you using to work with the government? Thank you. Can I ask Valentina? I'll try to keep it short. I think that well, I didn't share a slide of the PowerPoint that I have, but I think that we need a good agrarian policy. We are not just talking about if we have or if we not have local products. We are also talking about our tradition. What we are doing is that while we were communicating during many years, we wanted to communicate that it's important to create new laws, like creating a new tax for drinks with sugar. But it's important that the state, that the government invest not just resources, but also how the government supports the production of healthy, sustainable, and local products that keep us eating as we did before. We created another campaign to communicate how can we use our label to sink the consumption of drinks with sugar and give more importance to our traditional food and receipts. In Mexico, we published a manifesto with other organizations. The thing is that you have to create visibility. We also sent a letter to the government so the government could know the opinion of many civil organizations. I think it's important how we communicate. How can we strengthen? We also have to share scientific evidence. If we can manage that and we compete against the food system, about the fast food industries, and so we also have to do that, but to show that it has another cost. There is evidence everywhere, and we have to translate that. We have to bring that evidence to the communities. That's why we have digital and non-digital campaigns. We also go to the streets. That's what we did. It was important to read newspapers and to know the context of our countries, of our cities, to know who are the policy makers, who represent us, which are their agendas, and also make all that visible and create alliances and strategies. So they see that it has a political cost, the fact that they don't change things and to fight for basic human rights, like the rights for the health. Thank you, Betsy.